So I woke up today just feeling like pure, unadulterated crap. But hey, I need to make this list, don't I? So we're going to ignore the fact that my voice is significantly lower and that I can't breathe through my nose. Good stuff, good times. 2019 was a personally terrible year for me, and I don't know if that has something to do with the year being full of really underwhelming and disappointing movies, but nevertheless, we're here now. People liked me doing these list things for the last couple of years, so I figured why not do another roundup? Just so we're clear on something, first of all, I'm only accepting movies with the release date in 2019 in the UK. So Mary Poppins Returns, even though I reviewed it in 2019, you won't see it on this list. Also, these are not necessarily the best made movies. These go from my least favourites to my favourites. But some of them I personally think aren't necessarily, poorly made or are indeed better made than others. It's not an objective list of the poorly made garbage to the perfectly crafted masterpieces, so just bear that in mind. I'm going to give a little honorary award on the screen to each film so you get a basic idea of what to take from my TLDR ramblings. And one more thing. I saw Spider-Verse this year, but it was technically released last year, like Mary Poppins Returns, so I'm not going to put it on my list. But put it at number 1 on my last list because it's excellent and it was really good. I want to start by saying that I hate hating movies like this. It's clearly a lower budget, more independent, experimental title, and it should be right up my street. And I'm less inclined to be as mean to this movie as to certain others on the list. We'll get to that. With that said, I can't lie to myself. Family was a real slog for me to sit through. The humour rarely lands, the main character is too much of a caricature to be engaging and too grounded in her own arc for it to be intentional. The actual filmmaking is a big issue. There are frequent ADR issues and annoying audio mixing issues, and I'm not being funny, but these are the sort of things you can just sort of solve as you go on. It's got what it probably thinks is a dark sense of humour, but it's really just awkward humour that rubs me up the wrong way. As I say, I hate hating these kind of films, and it might definitely be someone's favourite film, but I can't pretend to enjoy something that I did. Honestly, when the best thing I can say about the film is how well it's lit, that may sound like I'm clutching at straws to compliment this movie. And I am. The Informer was the most forgettable movie I saw this year. So much of all I really remember is how the faces and the scenes were lit in really interesting ways. I remember frames where the face was half in shadow and half not. It took me back to old westerns. It was really, really good. The lighting was great in this film, but there's basically nothing else here which is interesting or fun. A drab, dreary and dire display. Missing out on this one isn't going to haunt you for the rest of your life. Hey, remember that movie from a couple of years back, Happy Deathday? Shut up, no you don't. Perfectly middle-of-the-road slasher flick with a vaguely interesting idea and a pretty good dark sense of humour, a perfectly mimetic concept. The film goes nowhere and stops revelling in its own dark comedy, much to its detriment. So they made a sequel and made it a sci-fi time travel movie. Yeah. A couple of very well cut together scenes, a comedic montage of repeated suicide. It's a lot funnier than it sounds, honestly, I promise. And a great performance from the leading lady doesn't excuse a piss-poor script with the most frustratingly bland and lazy writing and dialogue that gave me haemophilia. Okay, let me explain. Far From Home is fine, in a contextless vacuum. When you throw so much money at something, very rarely do you end up with a complete disaster. I said rarely, sometimes you do. I like Gyllenhaal. I don't really like how they basically made one of the most interesting villains in the Marvel canon just a dude who uses tech. But I like his portrayal of Beck. Ooh, that rhymed. I think this movie gets way too much credit when it's one of the least ambitious movies of the year. I'm convinced that the after-credits stinger, which is excellent by the way, has tricked people into thinking that this entire film is that good as a whole. But it just isn't. It has this amazing scene which almost plays like a horror film, but these fucking Marvel movies are becoming so flaccid and product-like that it's too widely spread to grow some fucking balls and actually do something interesting with the literal millions of dollars behind it. Of all the movies on this list, This one feels like the least ambitious, the most like a product, and the one I have the most contempt for, designed just to get people to consume it. My final point is that we now live in a post-Spider-Verse film climate, so this has absolutely no excuse to sit there with its thumb up its arse doing fuck all. When your movie feels more like a product than our live-action Disney remake, that's a real problem. Aladdin isn't a movie I'd recommend watching, but it is a movie that feels less like a direct mockery than Spider-Man. While I hated a lot of the things it did differently from the original, at least it actually did something different, making it way more worth your time than, say, the Beauty and the Beast remake. But outside of that, it's a weirdly flat affair. Jafar sounds more like a fashion critic, and should have been hammier and gone full panto, or been much more sinister. And there's a lot of things like that in the movie, where a lot of characters feel like they're either holding back from making this a real show, or just not interested in the slightest of putting any effort in. It just didn't work. Who would have thought that a spin-off with two pretty charismatically charming leads could be dumb fun? Yeah, not to say I didn't enjoy this movie, but it's not like I can really recommend it. It's got a pretty overly long third act, a plot that doesn't really do a whole lot, but Elba's an excellent villain, and our two leading men have enough chemistry to make it a bit of a laugh. If you do end up watching this with some friends, I'd maybe recommend getting a couple of drinks in, but it's not bad. It's a bit of a giggle. Remember when everyone decided they hated this movie before they saw it, like really mature adults, and all those people who equate legitimate criticisms with inherent misogyny? And then you actually see the movie, and it turns out to be a pretty bland affair clouded with 80s nostalgia and a sense of humour which ranges from kinda charming to really fucking weird and dumb. And it would have the worst child performance of the year. Seriously, that little child actor was really fucking bad. It's like the only thing I remember really vividly from this movie. I equate this movie with the first Thor movie, which I actually didn't care that much for, in terms of its inherent quality, so take that for what it's worth. It's got a bit more personality, and it feels a bit more charming, but it feels a lot like one of the original Marvel origin story movies, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Long Shot is a Seth Rogen movie which would have worked better if it weren't a Seth Rogen movie. It's a surprisingly politically charged film with a lot of social commentary and things that really kind of need to be said. But then Seth Rogen gets jizz on his face and everybody does a laugh. Yeah, maybe a different leading man would have suited this movie better. In fact, why wasn't O'Shea Jackson Jr. the lead? He was great in this film, and he probably wouldn't have let them do the scene where he gets the jizz in his face. Yeah, that's my big issue. It's a shame, but it's a movie that falls short of being great because of who ended up making it. Now, with Get Out being my favourite movie of 2017 and Jordan Peele actually opening his own production company instead of relying on Blumhouse, Us was a movie which was set up for immediate success and fell short. Not too short, of course. It's well crafted, it has an absolutely iconic villainess character which may go down as one of the best in the genre. But the plot felt a lot less interesting than Get Out. The text dumps feel like the exposition which could have and should have been handled better, and the humour really gets in the way. That's kind of the theme for 2019 if you didn't notice, a lot of shit dumb humour that didn't work. It's definitely worth your time, but coming from one of the best movies in the last decade in Get Out, I would have loved for this to be better. This movie is probably the easiest recommendation on this list. If you liked the first Lego Movie, you'll probably enjoy Lego Movie 2. It's not as good as the first, but we're technically 4 movies into the Lego franchise, so honestly, what did you expect? I'd probably say it was as funny as the Ninjago movie, but with better animation, and the attention to detail is awesome. I saw a thumbprint on a block at one point, like they're really putting effort into making it look like stop motion, even though it isn't. Brilliant stuff. I prefer the Lego movies when they're being used as commentary on other things, like how Lego Batman is a deconstruction of Batman and the superhero genre, and Ninjago is a deconstruction of anime tropes, but for what it is, it's an effective enough sequel. Besides, surely deconstruction and construction is the entire point of Lego. So I gave Feedback the award of the most ungood ending, because the ending isn't necessarily bad. I get what they're going for, and I think we're totally supposed to feel uneasy about how it plays out. It's an unassuming little film I'd never have thought of, but as it turns out, it's got some serious balls and some smart ideas with what to do in a recording studio. Though there's one space I absolutely wish they'd used more. It would have been perfect for this kind of movie. Some parts of the movie are a bit over the top, but ultimately it's a surprisingly ballsy movie that, hey, I recommend. Okay, maybe I'm seeing this movie a little harshly, given the circumstances I saw it in, and you can check the video about my terrible experience watching Joker, if you want to hear about it. But honestly, there are some things in this movie that just don't work for me. There's a plot twist that ties Arthur to Bruce Wayne, which I don't think works. The final monologue can't help but feel like it was trying to be more than it was. This movie's good, and I definitely think it was the movie of 2019, whatever that means. But it doesn't make it the best, and it doesn't make it my favourite movie. I didn't even realise How to Train Your Dragon 3 came out this year. But it did. And not only did it, it was really quite good. It's easily the best kind of ending that this series could have had, and the best movie DreamWorks have put out in a while. Not a lot to say for it, really. It's got gorgeous animation and compelling characters, as you might expect from this franchise, and it's a great ending. Okay, we're in the big boy leagues now. These are the movies that are just legit as fuck. Bo Burnham is one of the best performers of our time, and I say that with no hyperbole, and his debut film, 8th Grade, is just as excellently biting as his latest Netflix special, Make Happy. Coming from a very personal perspective, some of the music choices kind of took me out of things, but I love this movie. It's not a movie about hating yourself. It's a movie about not knowing how to love yourself. Insecurity, finding who you are, your public persona, all that stuff and more is masterfully explored in this movie. I genuinely think it's great, even if there are some things I would do differently as a filmmaker, and I highly recommend it. Knives Out is the easiest movie on this list to recommend. It's a real crowd pleaser. It's got an excellent cast and it's got excellent direction from Rian Johnson, who, and let's be fair here, is a good director. Yes, he did The Last Jedi, which I didn't actually think was that bad. I haven't seen it in a while, so... But he is a good director and he makes good movies, generally. With enough twists to keep you interested, I feel like this is the perfect adaptation of the old detective serials in the modern world that my mum used to love. I mean, I've been exposed to a lot of these things growing up because, as I say, my mum's a big fan of Murder, She Wrote, Criminal Minds, Rosemary in Time, that's one. Death in Paradise is one. I don't even know. She loves this sort of stuff, so I've been exposed to a lot of it, and it's a movie that we just don't get much anymore. And now I really hope we get more. I'd like to see more people come out and make a movie like this. I know what you're thinking. But Lewis, if Shazam is the best movie, why is it number 2? Well, there is a movie I like more than this one. But Shazam is definitely a brilliantly made film. It stands as one of the best ways to write a disabled character I've seen in ages, and has one of the most emotionally charged character motivations and arcs for a movie like this. It's just brilliant. I didn't expect to like it as much as this, but I really, really did. It's a bit like Spider-Verse in that regard. Oh, yeah, actually, speaking of that, this is another reason that Spider-Man is further down the list, because Shazam has balls. It talks about family, it talks about abandonment, it has the balls to show innocents die to emphasize how evil the villain is. This is a movie that feels like it's set in the real world. It's a great modernization of these kind of characters, and honestly, it takes so many more risks than Spider-Man, and it had so much more to lose with how shitty the DCEU has been so far. The only major criticism I have with Shazam is that I feel like Zachary Levi, or Levy, the grown-up dude, Chuck. I feel like Chuck sometimes plays the title character a bit too cartoony and childish, because Billy Batson as a child comes across as less childish and more grown up. But it's a minor thing. It kind of feeds into the whole idea that this is just a kid who got superpowers basically at random. And it's a great film. My favourite movie of 2019 is Thunder Road. Thunder Road is a movie which sparks my passion for filmmaking again. Much like 8th Grade, I love this movie, despite some technical and artistic decisions that I probably would change. I'm already familiar with the excellent original short film, and Jim Cummings, not that one, is an excellent writer and actor. In some ways, this is actually a better Joker movie than Joker is. I love this movie. I love that it exists. I love watching it. I love thinking about the bits that I don't like. I love thinking about what I would have done differently. I love using it to spark my creative passions again. I love this film. If you can find the original short on the internet, I highly recommend checking it out. But obviously, please do it just through official channels because #SupportIndieFilm. But I really recommend this movie. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. I bought it on Amazon because it was like £3. So, make your choice, kids. So that's my list. And obviously I didn't see every film this year, every film that I wanted to. I wanted to see The Lighthouse, but I just couldn't get around to it. I wanted to see The Irishman, but I'm moving again. So as a result, I don't exactly have the time or mental space to sit down and ingest a 3-hour epic. All I can do is apologize if there was a list, if there was a movie that you liked that wasn't on the list. It was definitely because I didn't see it. I hope you all enjoyed this list, and I hope next year is less shitty than this one. Fuck 2019, and let's get cracking.